Welcome to another powerful episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. I'm your host, Dorothy Odell, for this evening. I am also the founder and owner of Unstoppable Overcomers Productions, where we are a full-service media agency just for you. Go check us out at www.unstoppableovercomers.com and take a look, see how we can serve you. With that, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing our guest on tonight, Ann Hughes. Welcome to the show, Ann. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dorothy. Thanks for having me on your show. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're excited to get to know you a little bit here. So tell us a little bit about your overcoming story.
Sure. So I'm a mom of 2 kids on the autism spectrum. And after 21 years of marriage, found myself facing divorce, which was not expected and definitely didn't know how to proceed. But I made it my mission during the process to make sure I did whatever I had to do to make sure my kids would have a good outcome and a good life after divorce. So supporting them through divorce and myself, as well as making sure that afterwards we had what we needed to make sure that they could do whatever they needed to the best of their abilities, and that I didn't have to kind of stress out after that.
Right. So that must have been hard, married for all those years, and then, all of a sudden, bam, you're finding yourself alone, especially the children with special needs. So I can't imagine what that's like. But hats off to you for figuring it out. And I know there is somebody out there watching right now that's in the same situation and thinking, this is hard. Like, how do I get through that? And so what would your advice be to those women out there that is facing the same challenges?
Well, like you said, it is hard. It is overwhelming. And that's kind of what kind of overtakes you at first and sometimes paralyzes a lot of people. They don't know what to do, who to turn to, how to help their kids, how to help themselves get through the process. And so I spent lots of time, money, and effort trying to figure that out. And it took me a great deal of energy to do that. But I did come up with a good result. And so as a result of that, I was like, it's kind of silly that people should have to go through this much effort. And special needs divorce is so common. It's even higher rate of divorce than neurotypical kids being in the family. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take all my knowledge that I've gained and gain additional knowledge as a professional and be able to help people. So that's why I started my company, Special Family Transitions, and worked on my journey to get several certifications, including my most recent one being a certified special needs divorce coach. So what that means is that now I help people, parents who are facing divorce, who have kids with different challenges, and I help them trying to figure out what to do, believe in themselves, connect them with professionals, and help them plan for their divorce and get them past the emotion of divorce to the business of divorce, but also help them plan and look to the future.
Right. I love that. And obviously, there's a need out there for that. I mean, I think we've had one other guest that her son was on the spectrum, and they did some amazing things. He became like a puppeteer and things like that. He's a little bit older now, so able to do that. And transitioning from her being full-time caregiver to just being there as a source of support so that he could still live his best life. So that's important.
For sure, because, as divorced, we're trying to think of our situation and how to divide up the assets and the typical things, but we're also thinking about our children, and as we do with any divorce, but even more so when you have a child who may not be independent at 18 or may not have the skills and may need ongoing support for the rest of their lives. How do you plan for that? How do you consider that in divorce? And those are the questions that kept me up at night, and those that I tried to figure out and now help people with. So there's a lot of research to be done. There's a lot of professionals that you can connect with, and they're hard to find. And I spent a lot of time trying to find those people. And now I have resources, and I'm able to provide information to help people make better decisions and to think of next steps that they need to consider as part of their divorce, so that once the divorce is over, they don't regret the things they may have done or maybe didn't know to think about, and don't have to go back hopefully later to modify.
Right.
Because that's not fun to go back through a legal process once you've been through it.
Right. I always find in any situation that's hard, we tend to get, I call it a tribe, whether that be a group of women or men or whatever, that is there as a constant support for you. Did you have anything like that in your life when you were going through that transition?
It was hard because at first, I mean, definitely I had a community of parents that were that I knew from my kids growing up and being in the same schools and so on, similar challenges, but none of them
Mhm.
had really been divorced. And so I didn't have that resource. But what I did do is I remember the first weekend that I was separated, I went to a resource fair. And there I found a lot of people who had been through it, professionals who could help guide me. And they all, were very understanding, very empathetic and sympathetic to what I was going through. But at the time, you feel like you're alone, but you're not. A lot of people go through this. And so it's a matter, like you said, of finding a tribe, developing that. And now, there's definitely lots of Facebook groups and lots of people I can connect with as well as in person. But back then, you're kind of starting fresh and have to figure that out, like you said. But it is important to have a community of people, whether it's people who have been there either through divorce. I got some good advice on people maybe who didn't have special needs kids, but went through divorce, as well as family and friends that maybe you hadn't opened up to before that can be helpful. So I have a closer relationship now with my sister, kind of sharing different sides of me that maybe I hadn't been comfortable sharing in the past. But I will share about the person I mentioned about having through divorce that did have special needs kids. The advice she gave to me, which I will share with everybody because it kind of really inspired me, is don't rush through this process and don't settle, meaning um, don't do what's not in your best interest. I mean, you don't have to like fight for every single thing, right? So it's a
Mhm.
negotiation and it's a give and take. But go in there knowing what you want and trying to get as close to that as you can. This is not a time to step away to just try to not deal with the conflicts and challenges that are before you. This is a time for you to believe in yourself, overcome some of the doubts you may have about yourself, and just there advocate for your kids. So that's what you're really there to do, is advocate for your kids and what they're going to need in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finding along the way in life, it seems like we have to advocate for ourselves for a lot of different things, whether it's be through this situation or even medically, right? Watching somebody go through a cancer diagnosis, having to fight for, the next steps, getting the help that they need. And, if we don't advocate for ourselves, then no one else is going to. And that's but basically what I found over the last couple of years, in interviewing other people, that definitely being your own advocate is essential. So, those days of, putting your head underneath the covers and no, I don't want to deal with this are done, and having that support system, like you said, is imperative, and having somebody like yourself that can help them through the transition is important.
For sure.
So,
Yeah. 'Cause a lot of people think, oh, I have an attorney, I'll hire one, they'll do everything for me. That's not the case. I mean, they're there to represent you legally and try to get your best outcome, but you've got to tell
mhm,
them what's important to you. You've got to believe in yourself and give them information for them to be able to best represent you. And as a divorce coach, I'm not a legal professional, so I don't give legal advice or claim to do that. But what I
mhm,
do is help people consider what goals are important to them and how they can then maybe position things and share things with their legal team or financial team, whoever they're working with, so that they can um, help them come to a good place in the end.
right. Love that. Love that. And so, what would you say has been your best resource to date to help you get through your challenges getting through this situation?
Yeah, so for me, that's a good question. So I spent early on in my journey trying to kind of deal with the grief and the shock of divorce. I listened to a lot of things on YouTube, online, that I could find to understand kind of what was happening to me, and ways that
Mhm.
I could then use in school, tools and techniques and ways of thinking that would help empower me and help educate me as to what next steps might be and how to best represent what was important to me and to my kids. So I feel like shows like yours and different ones that have maybe different specialties, I think there's so
Mhm.
much knowledge that experts are sharing, and definitely seek those out because I mean, granted, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but I also share a lot of information online on my platforms about things
Right.
I've been through and things that I recommend as advice. And so I think there's so much value to be gained of that, to learn and then to then take that in your own situation.
Right. Love, love, love that. You know, like I said, I can't imagine going through that situation. Number one, in my opinion, would probably be, I'm not going to use the word difficult, but challenging at times to have a child with special needs, right? And so, what has that journey been like? Like, as a mom with special needs, what would some of the things that you would say to a mom out there that's watching that is, you know, maybe their child was just diagnosed or with autism? What would be some of the things that or some of the things that you went through to get yourself like, okay, everything's going to be okay?
All right, that's a great question because it is a similar process. You're going through a grief cycle, whether it's learning about a diagnosis or going through divorce. It's a it's a loss, it's a change in what you expected out of your life. And so, yeah, the first thing is you're going to be in shock, there's denials, like, no, this is not really happening. Maybe my child will outgrow this, whatever it might be. And you finally get to, and you get anger and you get all those other emotions, depression, and finally you get to the point of acceptance. And that's hard. And some people really never get to that point, which then actually causes a lot of problems, which then tend to lead to the high divorce rate. So they're kind of related. But um, know that you're going to be okay and your child is going to be okay. If you get a diagnosis, it doesn't change your child, it doesn't change, person in your life. Maybe your journey may look a little different than you anticipated. Your visions for the future may change. You're kind of going on a different path. There's a poem about going to Holland as opposed to a trip you plan to Italy. So the journey's different, but there's still a lot of nice sights and things to do on that new journey. And so the point is you want to be there to learn about the disability and ways that you can help your child so that you become, once again, their advocate and help them to get the best result and best outcome in life. So it may, I've gone through this. My kids now in their early 20s. And so, yeah, when they were 2 or 3, just diagnosed, I didn't know what the future will hold. And granted, every year we learn stuff, we make progress. And every year we have to think about the next year. So, yeah, don't take it all at one time that you have to plan your whole life and their whole lives all at one time. People change, they make progress in different ways and at different amounts and a different pace. So I have 2 kids and they're both very different, but they both have great skills that we've worked very hard to build and their personalities shine through. So, yeah, so what I learned as a special needs mom, as we call ourselves sometimes, is that we have to advocate for our kids and believe in our kids and do what we need to do through the school system to get therapies, medical things, etc. But those skills that I learned as a mom advocate through that process is what I then took in my divorce. So, I was my child's advocate. I was there to know what they needed. I was there to do the research of what they would need in the future. And all those things came into play in my divorce discussions, agreements, in my discussions with financial people, legal people, and with my soon-to-be ex. Because that person is still going to be involved in a child's life. You may be getting a divorce for many different reasons, but you're still going to have to co-parent, and they're still that person's your children's parents. And so we want to maintain, hopefully, as close a relationship as we can have for that child to have with both parents. And we want to, respect the other parent and what they can bring to the table. So it may be different. Every relationship and dynamic is different, but the way to do this in the best possible fashion is to focus on the kids, what they need, and how both parents can work together to help that child.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And being on the same page, Well, in any marriage, two parents should be on the same page, but that doesn't mean that we always are, right? That means that, just going through the next step and what that looks like, and then navigating it because you thought you were going to be together. Now that you're divorced, that whole, I'm not going to say a whole other can of worms instead of, I won't use the word problems, because problems, it's all how we see things. We can take a look at it and say, okay, this is a challenge, or we can say, okay, well, what are the steps that we're going to do to overcome that, right?
We call it
Um,
opportunity.
Opportunities. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Opportunities. So, and again, it's all the perspective of that person and what they're feeling at the moment, and it can change because I know. As a woman, we might see things one way one day, and then the next it's just like, no, the reality of it is this is this, right? Um, and getting into our heads about it sometimes, I'm sure, is a challenge as well.
Right, because we never have the right answer, and our, like you said, our mood and our knowledge and our experience may change day to day, and so yeah, we may have different ways of coming at something, may have different views of our child and what they can and can't do, or how they should do something, or how we should parent. So one thing I learned is that no one's going to parent the same exact way, right? We may have our ideas about how things work, and the other parent may have their ideas. But as long as the child is safe and healthy and in a good environment where the other parent can reach out to the other or has information to meet that child's needs, I think we'll be okay, and your kids will be okay.
100%. And I think with any divorce, whether it be with special needs or not, um, keep in mind what's best for the child. I've seen so many divorced people, my brother's divorce included, where it was all about somebody in the relationship just wants to get out of the relationship, and they'll do whatever and then treat the other spouse incorrectly. But what you're only doing is you're only hurting the child, essentially, because the other spouse is going to take it out on the child, not consciously, I would hope, but subconsciously, because well, by getting to the other parent, that, anyways, that's a whole other rabbit trail.
Yeah, sure. We don't want to put the child in the middle. So that's why we don't ever want to talk about stuff about the divorce in front of the
Mhm.
child or about the other parent. I mean, some people have to catch themselves. Maybe they're talking to friends or relatives or support system, and their child isn't with earshot. And even special needs, and maybe they don't speak, they can still understand. Even if they don't
Mhm.
understand all the words and what you're saying, they understand the tone, and they can
Mhm.
sense that. And so, yeah, I would say, try to have these conversations when their children are not around, and know that, a child wants to have a good relationship with both parents, even though it may be stressful at times and may be hard adjusting to a new dynamic, maybe, going to moms or going to dads, separately is a new thing for everybody that takes
Right.
some adjustment. But there's ways to get through that. For an example, I created what they call a social story. And for my family, which is something families with autism do and teachers will do and therapists, to get them used to something new and different. And so I
Mhm.
created one for my family when I was trying to explain to them what was happening when it was new. And so we kind of know what to expect. And so that kind of helped us. So that's on my YouTube channel. If people want to refer to that, so they can do it for their own family as
Sure.
well.
What is the name of your YouTube channel?
Special family transitions. So all my I try to keep it simple. So my company name and all my social media are all special family transitions.
Love that. I love that. When we keep it simple, it's easy for everybody to find us. I did the same thing. So I get that. Yeah. And so would you say that your children have adjusted well over the transition of the divorce?
They have. I mean, sure. At first, it was really hard,
Mhm.
especially for them to understand. It kind of came out of the blue for all of us, so we didn't have time to process. So, advice I would give to people is, if you know divorce is coming or maybe coming, or you're having discussions as parents, kind of slowly introduce that to the kids. I mean, you don't want to one day be gone, because that's a big shock to everybody, and it's
Mhm.
hard to deal with that. So, um, maybe have those conversations at their level using either stories or involve like therapists, if they go to therapists, or even the school, to let them know what's happening. So if they see changes in behavior, they can understand that it's not coming out of the blue, but it's something going on at home. And that way they can provide maybe more support for the child at school or whatever. But yeah, so definitely, take time, have structure. So for instance, when you're starting to do parenting plans or starting a new routine, it helps for the child to know what to expect when they'll be with mom, when they'll be with dad, because there's so much already upheaval in their world. They just want
Mhm.
some structure and predictability, which is important for
Right.
kids with autism. And so you want to kind of create a schedule as to, okay, these are days with mom or nights. We call them, sometimes as psychologists call it, number of sleeps. So you can have 5 sleeps with mom and then 2 sleeps with dad. So it's not as drastic. And have them maybe visit the if dad's has a new place or whatever it might be, have them maybe
Mhm.
visit for a little bit before spending the whole weekend there, so they can kind of get adjusted as well. So you want to just do things in small, slow increments if you can. Ideally,
Right.
that would be helpful.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking, uh, right now, like what were some of the signs that you noticed? Well, wait a minute, that maybe there was your child had autism. What was for those parents that are out there that they're like, well, I'm not really sure what's going on with my child, but something isn't 100% right. And I'm just trying to use the best words. No offense to anything or to anybody, but I'm just trying to find the correct words, politically correct words to use. What were some of the signs that you noticed?
Sure, yeah, and so it's so common that people these days are um, experiencing a diagnosis of autism for their children and sometimes for themselves. You have a child with autism and there's some genetic components to that. Some people, after they get their child diagnosed, realize, hey, maybe I have some of those tendencies as well. So that happens. So if and it's okay. So autism is a spectrum, which means it's a wide range um, of abilities, and it's a wide range of symptoms and different way it can be defined and manifest. And so you have people like um, Albert Einstein, Elon Musk, and different people who are maybe high profile that may be on the spectrum, but they're called what they're called high functioning. And once again, you mentioned about politically correct. So there's different ways that people like language and so on. Some people like the word disabilities, some people like the word special needs, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So just know that I'm accepting of whichever way people want to call that. But
Right.
and then you have some people who um, don't speak at all and will never be independent. And so that's why it's a big range. But signs to look for when your child is young may be that they're having you may notice their language is delayed in terms of understanding, in terms of being able to form words or sentences. So you may um, have a child use words, but they may be repetitive and it's not really um, true communication in terms of trying to address, uh, being meaningful conversation. They can't have like two-way conversation. So for instance, my son would, have words or repeat things that he saw on TV shows. I'm like, oh, he can speak, right? For a long time, like you said, we talked about the first phase is denial, and so
Mhm.
it takes a while for us to finally come to the point where we want to, ask a doctor, ask a professional. And what you find sometimes is your pediatrician may say, oh, they're just young. Let's wait till they're a little bit older, or maybe need to develop their skills or give them more social opportunity, whatever it might be. And so, but if you as a mom in your gut feel something's not right, then you can still have another opinion. You can go to a pediatric um, specialist. It could be a neuropsychologist, it could be a psychologist, it could be a developmental pediatrician that can do tests as early as even 18 months. So you don't have to wait till they're in elementary school. But other signs, you may ask about signs. So there's speech, there's behavior, there's language, there's maybe eye contact. You may notice they're not making eye contact, they're not pointing. I'm pointing now, whichever the
Mhm.
camera is going. But you may find that some kids on the spectrum may not point, like at the zoo, typical things. Say, oh, look at that animal, and you may find that they're not doing that, or they may seem not as connected with you. And it's hard, especially when they're your first child. You don't really know what to expect and what to compare to. That was the case with me.
Right.
But even then, with my second child, he was much different than my first. But he did have some repetitive um, um, habits and behaviors that somebody else kind of spotted before I even did, to realize that maybe he needs to be tested as well. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, there's a whole um, broad range of people reach out to me. I'm happy to share resources, but there's so many out there as we talked about. But also through the school district, once your child is 3, then at school they can do assessments and do special. Um, they call them IEPs, individual educational plans, where they'll do full testing and then they'll give them special either accommodations or goals. Um, and then it could be either special classrooms or even in a in a typical environment may offer more supports or people to come in and help. So the point is there's lots of signs to look for, and every child is different in terms of
Mhm.
how they portray their symptoms and how the progress they might make. But know that there's supports available, whatever age they may be. And so I mentioned about 3 years old going to school. Even before that, they have the early childhood intervention. So from 0 to 3, there's definitely in every state, and I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but there's supports that also can help identify autism and create provide supports even before they go to school.
Right. I love that. And now there was something that you said that was very important. Um, you kind of feel that your child has some kind of like is there's something going on. You're really not sure. Maybe you've had somebody say, point something out to you, and some people can take that as like really criticism because we want to think our child is perfect. Not that they aren't, no matter what special needs that they have, but we always want to make sure. We always feel that as a parent, that our child's perfect, there's nothing wrong. And you said you go in the denial stage, and but now things are being pointed out, you don't want to believe it, you're in denial. And some people live in denial forever and refuse to get the child the help that they need. I know of a couple people that the writing is there, everybody has told them, this needs, your child needs help, and it's only help. It's not like it's the end of the world. And it's the betterment for your child. If your child had these extra, like an extra computer or something, or extra learning tools, it's only to enhance them. It's not to do anything, not to hurt them, right? And yet they're still in denial and refuse to do anything about that. What would you say to that parent? Because I mean, I find myself in that situation now with somebody that I know, and I'm just like, can you just get them the help they need?
Why? Because I mean, I guess the whole reason behind that is the earlier you can identify it and the earlier they can get help, the better outcome they may have, right? The earlier the
Mhm.
intervention, the more intense, then hopefully we can overcome and learn skills to be able to be more successful in elementary school and beyond, in adulthood as well. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, a lot of people, it kind of goes back to that denial because they don't want to accept that in their eyes and in the vision they had for their lives and for their children, they're anything less than perfect. And I'm not saying any kind of disability or autism is anything less than it is, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they're still beautiful. Everyone's beautiful in their own way. Everyone has their skills, and everyone is unique in their own way. So I'm not
Mhm.
saying having a diagnosis makes anybody any less. But
Exactly.
if people do think of it as your brain, somebody when I went to a special needs school for the first time because I had my older child, it took me a while to come to the realization that we needed a diagnosis, and I even had a doctor tell me no, he's fine and all that. So it took me several times to when I felt it wasn't right to finally go to professionals um, to get that diagnosis, and I finally did. But um, but in the meantime, because he was in programs like Mother's Day Out and little things where it was hard for him, and I didn't even know, like for instance, in that example, I didn't know till the very last day that he was having such a hard time in that environment, that he was so different from other kids because they didn't feel like they could share that with me for whatever reason. But if they had, I could have then taken my next step, which was go to a special kind of setting for kids with autism, where day one he was different. He was felt accepted and was actually able to learn skills and make progress because they knew how to work with him. And the person at that school explained to me autism is basically, it's a different brain wiring, it's a different way of thinking. And so we
Mhm.
want to adapt to that. We want to help that child learn in the way that they best learn, right? So they may not be able to sit in the large group or be in a loud environment and absorb the information like other kids do. Maybe they need it taught in a smaller setting or certain ways with more structure, more reinforcement, whatever it might be. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But it is hard for people, like you said, to make that step to come to that realization that their child needs extra supports and that it's
Mhm.
going to take a little bit more extra effort. And sometimes it's hard for the mom and sometimes it's hard for the dad. And that, once again, to the other conversation kind of leads to some of the issues um,
Mhm.
and the stresses that are in a marriage. And not
Right.
because of, not, I don't ever want to say divorce is because of kids, but, having you've got all the reasons for regular divorce anyway. And then you have the
Mhm.
extra stresses of being a special needs parent and all that entails, then maybe adds, compounds that if the relationship wasn't strong enough to begin with or doesn't continue to grow and develop. And so marriage, like a child, you have to continue to nourish it, to see what is it that that child needs
Mhm.
to grow, to learn, and whatever the skill may be, from whether it's basic skills or even planning for the future. How can we help that child as a child and adolescence and even in adulthood? I'm facing that now. My children are now adults. Well, every day we're still planning for what their future will look like. And so every year you kind of have to reevaluate, what comes next. And so, yeah, you're never going to solve everything or plan everything all at one time. Just kind
Right.
of, take it in short bursts and do what you
Right.
need to do to make sure that child has supports they need now to learn what they need now, and then see where they are in the future, and then plan with that. And there's people there to help you through the schools, through different professionals that can help you get there. But yeah, it is
Right.
hard, to get there.
Right. I did not know that there was special schools just for children with autism. So that would be amazing because you're right. Then they feel accepted, right? I know somebody that I know, their child, gets bullied out on the playground every day because they're different. And instead of putting them through that environment, why not give them an environment where they can thrive? Right. Because those other children are just like them. So of course they're going to understand it and they're going to really adapt well. And that could be the major difference between, you know, them having a good life or a great life, in my opinion.
Right. It might be that maybe, for a few years, maybe you have intensive programming or special schools or therapy, whatever it might be. And then what I was looking for before is mainstream. So then they can be mainstream back in a regular type setting where they have more skills, they have more strategies that they can
Mhm.
then rely on, that they've learned and that their parents have learned and other professionals um, there that they can then to access as well to support them when they have those challenges. So yeah, for instance, one of my kids, the one who's higher functioning, if you want to call it that, he started off in special schools, and then eventually he ended up going to I hate to say regular schools, right, but public school
Public school,
and
yeah.
more mainstream environments. And now he's in a college program, right? So you never know that early
Awesome.
intervention. Yeah, he's doing great. And it's a special program for children with learning differences. But he
Right.
got his associate's degree, and now he's working on his bachelor's. And so he's always going to need different kind of supports. And I'm happy to do that. But the point is, people do make progress, and you want to provide that help early on as much as you can. Don't be, it may be hard for you as a parent, but don't think about yourself. Think about your child. I guess that's the way I would position it, is what can we do to help them? It may be hard for you, for sure, emotionally, psychologically, whatever, to come to terms and deal with those emotions and the diagnosis. But
Mhm.
but who are you hurting in the process? You're the kid, the child is not getting the services and help they need at this time to maybe then overcome or learn to deal with the challenges that they have, so that later they can um, do even more and more and have those changes be less apparent. Because the worst case is if you don't do anything, and then finally they're at school and maybe they're in upper elementary school, when the teacher's like, we can't help them. Right now they're struggling, they're trying, socially it's hard, academically they're struggling, and then they have to find some other ways to help them. But if you can do it as early as you can, I guess is the best way. But I want to say, but it's never too late, right? Some people don't get that diagnosed till they're in their teens, sometimes as adults, and that's okay. I just learned that there's different things out there and different strategies that we can learn to help us whatever phase we're at.
Right. There's something you said that was so critical. As an adult, maybe diagnosed as when you're an adult, because growing up, so I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I know that I have the tendencies. I know that there's certain things that I do that it has to be regimented. It is OCD. It is like boom, boom, boom. This is how I want it. I've learned to adapt, and I've learned to just, that's not OCD or ADHD. That is just who I am, right? And so even as an adult, when you get the proper diagnosis or whatever, then you're like, everything makes sense, right? Afterwards, once you actually go, wait a minute, this could be a tendency for this or this or this, but accepting just who you are and learning the tools you need and not making yourself wrong for it, right? Because I used to make myself wrong because my mind jumps and things like that. And so it's not wrong. That's who I am. I have squirrel moments. And that can sometimes trigger other people. But learning to stay focused and learning, to get the attention span back to where it is, where before growing up, we never had that. I don't even remember ever being tested in school for any of that. It wasn't a thing back then. Now there's more testing, which is great. And who's to say that there is really a problem? A lot of people like to put labels on things, and I don't really like labels because we can speak our own minds and our own things like that. But then, as an adult getting these diagnoses, it could probably take that person out. But in the same sense, I would hope that they would say, wait a minute, that explains a lot. And so by using these tools, I can further advance myself.
Right, exactly. And those diagnoses sometimes become empowering. Like, oh, you can finally, find a reason for why maybe people have a different way of thinking or acting. And that's what makes us unique, though. I mean, look at the skills that you have and things that you're able to do that maybe other people, can't do because they don't think in the same way you do. So once again, having ADHD or other kind of different ways of learning and thinking is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we do things in a different way, and that we have more creative ways of doing things, and we may approach things and view things in a different way. And that's what I think makes us all unique and be able to contribute. So a lot of people follow on social media and different influencers and trainers and different programs. They'll come out and say, well, I have ADHD. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay. So that's what, made them successful, because they did think differently and they did have to overcome. And now they're helping other people, like you said, find strategies, different ways of doing things, maybe different approaches that can help you, with the challenges you may have in terms of time management or planning or structure, but it still makes you do special things that maybe somebody else who is more structured or have those different ways of thinking, they wouldn't be able to do.
Right. 100%. It's funny because it takes me back to a story. I used to work at they had campers. We sold campers, trailers. And so once a week, we had a special exercise that we had to do some training on the computer. And so I had just walked in. They said, okay, it's really not your thing, but I want you to try and figure out and come up with how we found out this price. So I went, and in no time at all, I went into the system, did something like, I guess, pure luck, right? Boom, boom, boom. So afterwards, everybody came to the table. We had the discussion, how everybody derived at it. And when it came to me, he goes, so how did you figure yours out? So I told him, he goes, wait a minute, I've been on this system for 20 years and I had no idea that even existed. So, it's funny. We can look at it as the problem, or we can look at it as hey, this is great. This is a solution. We can help other people in different areas, like you said, because we can all come together and make everything beautiful in our own
Exactly.
way.
Yeah, like my son I was referring to earlier, he's a whiz at maps and remembering details. Actually, both my kids are like that. They remember something forever. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, he's my little personal GPS when we need to go somewhere. He'll tell me exactly where we need to go and how to get there. So, yeah, people, see things differently and see the world differently. And sometimes, if we're looking at, past high school and for future employment, if you've got a child with learning differences, then there are certain areas or jobs where their skills are going to be very valuable. And so
Mhm.
it's a key to figure out, what are they interested in and where can we then help them promote and learn those kind of skills and expose them to those type of either employers or opportunities so they can, plan for their future as well.
Right. And there's just one thing I want to bring up on the divorce thing, because in my mind, I was, I get marriage is hard enough without having as a special needs child, and or having a child that needs more attention, I guess. And I guess in a marriage, if we don't have the communication to begin with, we're basically behind the eight ball anyways. As somebody whose parents would have just celebrated 50 years last weekend. Granted, there was not a lot of communication in that marriage. It was just like, I don't know how you stayed together, but it was more like we weren't giving up on each other, and that was it, right? But I can't imagine. For me personally, it was, I wanted a child, but then I'm like, okay, if I became a single parent like that, I would have just been devastated, because that's not what I had thought for myself. So, in my opinion, if we work together and stay together, it might. I mean, either way, you don't want to be in a loveless marriage or and have your kids in that. But could you see things differently maybe now? And not, I don't want you to, think that, you know, I'm trying to say this
Yeah.
diplomatically.
So I
What kind
think
of advice would you give to people now, I guess, to say, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't the option?
right. So I will tell you that I do see things differently now than I did 5 years ago
Right.
when I was first starting this process, or even 10 years ago before divorce was ever on the horizon and I never saw it in my future,
Right.
actually, even 6 years ago. Right. But, what I will say, whether you have a special needs child or not, right? Marriage is a commitment. And so if you're committed to making it work, that's number one, right? But it
Right.
takes work. And people would say marriage takes work. So I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Marriage is love and it shouldn't be hard work, right? Because my parents also, were married till the day my dad died. And so, granted, I mean, a relationship is different and they were
Yeah.
open communicators by any means, but they made their marriage last because they were committed to that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, some people, of course, start out that way. We all start out that way when we get married. But
Yeah.
the reality is, at least half of marriages and then divorce, and it's a much higher rate for special needs families. But
Yeah.
but that's okay. It's not a reflection on you. Sometimes
Mhm.
people go different ways, and if you're not able to, if both people are not committed, um, then you can't make that marriage work, right? I mean, it
Right.
takes two. That's what
Right.
goes back to the initial point about commitment. You both have to be committed to make it work and work on it. And if there's challenges, they need to be able to communicate that to the other partner. And if there
Mhm.
is issues that you're dealing with, you want to be able to try to address it and try to fix it if you can, right? Or bring in or go with professionals and get excuse me, some therapy or whatever support to address those issues. But sometimes people don't do that. And so one parent maybe, or, partner maybe, out the door and they don't want to fix it.
Right.
As much as the other one parent may want to, right?
Yeah.
You can't make somebody do something or be something they're not, right?
Right.
So if,
100%.
if they're willing to make the change and go through therapy or work hard on the marriage and the challenges, there's always a chance, right? Your marriage is going to work, even if you're already thinking about divorce or talking about it. It doesn't mean you're going to get divorced. A lot of people overcome their challenges, right? Um,
Right.
and and get through the hard times. That makes their marriage stronger sometimes. And so I'm not here to advocate for divorce. I'm here to support people who then have either exhausted their other options or choose not to do that. And that's a choice. And people don't want to do that. And that's okay. And so what's important though for the kids is that, like you said, you want them to be in a positive, healthy environment,
Yeah.
and it's better. Studies show for them if it's a high conflict situation, if there's any kind of abuse or bad situation where the kids are seeing that, that's not healthy, and then you don't want them to grow up seeing that. In those cases, they're end up being happier and better adjusted if the parents get divorced and keep it positive. So the most of the conflict happens and the issues happen when it's a nasty divorce, when there's conflict that the child sees and is exposed to between the parents. But if you can provide a good environment for that child, with the parents being divorced and each having a loving home for that child, then it's okay and that child will be okay. So I guess that's the point, is that we don't ever want to see ourselves, we don't go into divorce, into marriage, thinking we're going to get divorced, but it happens. But what can we do to minimize the effects on the child? And that's by approaching it in a positive way and having professionals like myself, as needed to help you get there, right? So I'm not there. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm here to help people, support them either before, during, or after divorce, to let them know that they're okay and help them think about ways that they can get through this process and what their goals are, so for themselves and for their kids, so that we can get through this process and at the end of the day have a result that they can be happy with and proud of, especially proud of the way they've handled themselves, and to be a role model for their kids as well. I can tell you that, my son said to me after my divorce and my process and started my business, he says, "Mom, you're a different person than you were years ago," right? So he sees what I did and how I advocated for myself and for him, and now I have advocate for other people. And so, you mentioned before about your past experiences. So every experiences leads us to where we are now and where we're going in the future. And so we want to take everything as a learning opportunity. Just because your life takes a different path doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It could be a good thing for you and for those around you as well, and those that you can influence.
Absolutely. I love that. And thank you so much, Mary Ann, for all of your wisdom. That was a lot of great information. Now we come to the part of the show where we're going to bring the lovely and amazing Kimberly Genovese to the show. Welcome, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Dorothy?
I'm amazing.
And how about you, Mary Ann? How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to share all this information, all these different insights, and from everything from diagnosing autism to life after divorce. So this is great.
Yeah, well, and it really is an honor and a privilege to be with you tonight on the show. Being someone whose parents divorced when I was 2 and living through multiple divorces. One of the things I'm really loving, Dorothy, about our June shows, I'm noticing a common theme. Everything's a gift, and where's the silver lining?
Yeah.
And, really living in that. And your entire show tonight, all I kept hearing is, everything's a gift. Literally, like we come into this world with amazing gifts. And are we surrounding ourselves with people that see the gifts, can point out the gifts, and putting ourselves in fertile soil to support the gifts? Whether that's being married, not being married, having kids, not having kids, getting divorced, not getting divorced. And I really, really, really love the conversation around autism and spectrums and, Einstein and, all right. It's all in the labeling. It's all in the wording. Right. And what a difference that makes. And Mary Ann, I just so appreciate having been a child, going through the kind of things, the experiences that you were pointing to. And thank God, truly, truly, thank God for people like you out there doing what you're doing, because everything you're speaking to, and I'm going to invite you, that everything you shared tonight applies. I don't care if you're part of a healthy family or an unhealthy family, a happy marriage or an unhappy marriage. Everything you said tonight applies to every family. And, if people, for those of you watching the show tonight, if you were only listening from the space of like, wow, it's so great that families dealing with divorce and autistic, amazingly gifted children, it's so great they have Marianne. I invite you to rewatch the show and listen from a space of, all the ridiculous, richness that you poured out onto them tonight, Marianne, for any family, and definitely anyone who's single, that sees marriage and family in their future, because your wisdom, your experiences, and the gifts that you shared tonight were priceless.
Thank you so much. It really touches my heart that you said all those things. And so, yeah, like like we were saying, we sometimes find our purpose later in life or through life experience. And so I'm honored to be able to give back and share my wisdom and experience that I've had to learn over the years and through my process. And so, yeah, my goal is to help others so they can have a better path and know that it'll be okay.
You just occurred like a fairy godmother, which is not a surprise because, Dorothy and I are fairy godmothers and we attract fairy godmothers, and that you can, sprinkle your awarenesses and the just everything that you have to offer on families and have them find the silver linings that are available to them in, in an experience of divorce. And the very, 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 very wonderful experience of, I'm still struggling with the languaging, right, around children that might take a little bit longer to understand what their gifts are. That they're, I was going to be straight. I have it. They're way more intelligent than the rest of us. That and we got to catch up with them, right? One of my favorite movies on the planet is The Accountant. Have you seen that movie with Ben Affleck? Oh, it's brilliant. Oh, if you love Ben Affleck, everyone out there will love this movie. Men love this movie. It's a great movie.
You're the second one within the last 3 weeks to tell me about it, and I have yet to watch it.
So, there's a new one coming out. There's a sequel coming out. So now, everyone watching, everybody go watch The Accountant. So you're prepared for when the second one comes out. And he is on the spectrum. And, it's so good, right? Okay. So with that there, just really, again, it literally heals my heart to know that, 2-year-olds back in 1967 that didn't have your kind of resources, that the world has evolved and your kind of resources are available. And so that's just the great news. And I couldn't be happier that you're out there. So with that, Marianne, what are your 3 fundamentals so that they can be left with, we could put a bow on this show, and call it a show.
Sure. So one I'll add is that talk about divorce being an end, or being some people see it as an end, but I would challenge people to think of it not as an end, but as a new beginning. Right? It's a new beginning to many great things that are ahead of you. So if you go through it, come out of it with that attitude, I think you'll have a much happier future post-divorce. But I will say that as we talked about, first and foremost, believe in yourself and that you have the skills and the confidence and ability to get through this process and get through challenges, whether it's divorce or raising a special needs child or whatever your challenge may be in life. Believe in yourself and know that you are good enough to deserve the good result that you and your family are entitled to and can get. 2, I would say, is find and surround yourself with professionals or others who have been through this, who understand this, who can support you in whatever challenge that you're facing. And 3, believe in your kids and do whatever you need to do to make sure that they're going to get the best outcome in life So that requires you to advocate for them. So it kind of ties back to the first one. But whatever we're doing for our kids, and keep that at the forefront of your mind when making any kind of decision or how we're going to act or carry ourselves in divorce. It's for our kids and how they're going to look back on this day as to how we carry ourselves and what we did for them when times were tough.
So great. So beautiful. And again, everything that comes out of your mouth, Marianne, applies to every human on the planet, which is so brilliantly done. So thank you for those amazing fundamentals. One thing I always like to put in whenever anybody mentions professionals, right? Like your number 2 is just because they occur or have the credentials of a professional, Marianne, would you agree that if they rub you raw, like into it, like if they just don't feel like a match, would you agree? Like, don't think, like, especially if you're in a space where you're lacking confidence, make sure you like vet out more than one professional, and you don't put them on some kind of a pedestal that's above your intuition. Would you agree that it's good to scope out more than one professional till you land, kind of like Goldilocks, land on the right professional for you?
Exactly. Yeah. Like we talked about, you have to trust your gut as a mom, as a woman, as anybody, right? If something doesn't feel right, it's not right. And there's always another approach. There's another person you can find that maybe you can have a better relationship with and have the same approach and ways of thinking and approaching things. And like you said about credentials, so somebody could have all the credentials in the world, but if they haven't either been through it or is someone that's not right for you, then it's not the right person. Sometimes the person who can help you most is maybe not somebody with a degree and extra certifications, but it's a person who's 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, who's been down your path, is going down your path, and they can be your support. So I've done both. I've been there and I've got certifications. So I hope to be able to touch and help people. But there's different people out there as well. So yeah, definitely find your person, find your tribe, and you'll be okay.
Yes. And wow, I'm telling you, people, we did not prepare that. That was not, and we just love how the Holy Spirit takes over. Seek out Marianne. Like, people, please, please, please seek out Marianne wherever you might be, even if it's like, like maybe you're contemplating divorce, right? You're not even like in that place. Reach out to her. Again, from my listening and my experiences and all the divorces that I've gotten to experience, both personally and in helping others, Marianne's the real deal. So please, 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 like, I'm so emotional right now. Do not run to Marianne. Don't walk wherever you might be in the process, as a guide, as a guiding light. And again, I am very emotional, Marianne. Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing in the world. And Dorothy, back to you.
Thank you. I just okay, so I talked a little bit about one of the past guests that we had on here who is autistic. And I just want to give a shout out because he had a book that came out November 1st. His name is Owen Sharp, and it's The Great Flood of Bovenland. This gentleman, like I said, is so unique and so gifted. And he didn't use, and I don't like the word disability, but he didn't let his disability define who he was. So not only did he go out and create mannequins and stuff like this, he actually went out and wrote a book and got the book published. So anything is possible no matter what. And I love how Kimberly started it off that, we children with special needs are like teaching us something all the time. And it just means that, just because there's a little bit of a delay in somewhere, they're like highly intelligent. And I'm not going to say that's part of the problem, but we need to catch up to that. I mean, anybody with autistic, who has autism, or what's that other one that the guy Rain Man had? I forget that show. Yeah, what was it? Autism. So anyways, like, they're highly intelligent. And just because they have some kind of title that the rest of us doesn't have, that doesn't mean that they're any less intelligent. They're more. So allow your children to bring out those gifts inside them, and don't just, pat their head and like, no. Allow them to reach their potential, because I'm so glad that Cindy Sharp did, or else the book would not have been written, right? And it's a great way. That's what Owen wanted to do. He wanted to make sure that, other kids could learn from him, and that there was a whole other world out there just waiting for it to be opened. So just had to put that out there. And thank you so much, Marianne, for all your wisdom. And like Kimberly said, I don't know why I wanted to call you Carrie Ann for a minute. Like Kimberly said, go check out Marianne right now. Definitely connect with her. And especially if you're in any of the processes, or just finding out that your child may have an autism diagnosis, or you're contemplating divorce or something, or separation, go reach out to Marianne today. We are so thankful for joining us today. And thank you for your time, Marianne.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys, don't forget, be unstoppable in all that you do. Same time, same channel. Go check out our YouTube channel, Unstoppable Overcomers, and check us out on Roku, because we are over there. Definitely watch us over there. Share with your network. We want to get the positive message out there, because,